Hello folks in 113. I'm laughing right now because I'm hearing squirrel chatter. I don't know if you can hear it on from the audio microphone on this camera, but I get so happy when I I can't help it. This is cheerful. Today is finally a day that isn't snowing, so thanks for that. Anyhow, the section we're going to be covering is section 2.5, right, which is the last of chapter 2 before we begin chapter 5. Right. Let's see, here's the calendar. Today is Thursday, February 25th. Right, so we're right on schedule, which is great. And we're just going to do this one section, which is actually pretty brief. Let me see, March is coming. Next week, not that you need to worry about this now, but next week we're going to be having, we're going to begin chapter 5. All right. This is the end of 2. The only thing that I have for you today in the packet is basically this example, which is quite involved, but it's a fun example, I thought. I took this from some of the textbook that I had on the same subject. I think as part of the same file in the PDF, I included this other page, but if you were watching section 2.4, this is already something that you have in theory. I printed it for my own sake because as I was going through it, I'm like, okay, I needed this to tell me the information unique to the problem, and I needed this to remind myself of where I should go, right, as I'm going about the process. Now, this is a very fun example, so I thought this was best, right? The name of this section is Applications. You pull this up here. And I may not even need to adjust the lights. Come on. What does that mean? If it's applications, it just means that it's word problems, essentially, from the theory from the section before. So we're working with reset Venn diagrams. And if this is a little bit too hard to see, I promise I will close the blinds. Anyhow, you should see, I don't think I'm going to have to. You should see two PDF available that looks like this. And let me blow it up a little bit. And as I said, there's this page from last time included with it, just as a reminder. It's a blank Venn diagram, so sometimes because this gets kind of hairy and involved, you know, you might want to have a second blank anyway. I would write in pencil while you're doing this, just to avoid an issue. All right, let me do myself a little favor here. And just sort of minimize and maximize. That's better. Okay, good. That's much better. I was fighting with it yesterday. Sometimes as a default, when you have multiple pages in a PDF, it makes it sort of like an actual book, and I don't like that. Not when I'm using a computer anymore. Alright. So, to answer questions, sorry they're so small, I had to fit them here. Questions A, B, C, and D down at the bottom here. All right. What I would encourage you to do is read this, and I'll read it with you and highlight some information. All right. And then this is more or less a reiteration of it. I think I'm going, even though you obviously could read this yourself, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of go through this information and then make bullet points in real time just to illustrate the thought process that I would go through myself. All right. I list a lot of things, and that is a sort of conditioned habit that I have, and I would encourage that because I think it's helpful, especially in a case like this. All right, so we're going to, if they're talking about 3 types of music, in this case, it says 500 people are surveyed, and it was reported that 270 listened to the category of hip-hop genre, all right, 320 listened to rock, and 160, hopefully this green will cooperate, 160 listen to country. All right, and then it goes on to give you some cross-genre people, all right, which I'll just put in black because I'm running out of colors here. All right, 140 listen to hip hop and rock. All right, 120 listen to both rock and country, and 80 listen to country and hip hop. All right, then there's this other category, 50 listen to all three genres of music. All right, that information is essentially listed here. All right, but because I'm going to have to switch slides ultimately, I'm going to just do one thing now. All right, I'm going to remind you firstly of what each of these regions would be labeled, because as you're going through the process of constructing the diagram, that is really the fundamental thing that you need to remember. All right, that this category in here, this chunk here, moon face here, is region 1. All right, and then this Star Trek-esque symbol here is what is left over of 2. Right, and this is 3. And then this biscuit here, petal, is 4. And this is 5. Alright, and this is 6. And the last thing here is, the Venn diagram itself anyhow, is 7. So 2 eyes. Outside of it is region 8. Okay, so do either have the reference next to you while you're working, or try to memorize that this is the arrangement, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 for a 3-set Venn diagram. Okay? Now, this is the information, but then there's the procedure, the order of operations, when you're trying to actually fill in information that you've derived from this given to you. So let me switch over to this. All right, and here's a blank again. All right, you could already see, that's interesting that I can move that around. All right, that whenever you do these, all right, the procedure that will serve you best, right, is to start with region 5, dead center. That is the thing, the category that is the overlap of all 3 simultaneously, right? Then do region 2, 4, 6, 1, 3, 8, and, pardon me, 7, and then 8 in this order. Do it that way every time. All right. And now I'm going to free this up. All right, and if I can help it, I'm going to try to get myself some space that you could see the sort of thought process that I myself would use as this was unfolding. So humor me for a moment while I try to get something working here. I'll get my bootleg paint out and finagle this. Okay. Alright, I would like to blow that up just a wee bit. There you go, that's better. That should work. Okay. The information, I'm sorry. The information that you get from here, this actual unique problem, I'm going to more or less reiterate here. All right, again, just for the reason to show you in real time what the thought process would be, at least what I apply. All right. I would firstly ask myself, how many distinct sets are there? All right, categories, whatever you want to call them, or since we're talking about music, genres. All right, given no other information, like suppose they didn't even tell you, here, draw a picture, all right? They would say, then you'd have to wonder to yourself, all right, what they're talking about 3 distinct things, all right? Basically 3. And of those, what do we have? We have hip hop, rock, and country. For the sake of simplicity, all right, what we need to do is associate those genres of music with a letter, all right? Because the diagram is, again, you could label it hip hop, rock, and country would be the one that actually works, right? Because it's C, right? That's logical. But I'll go with this. I'm going to say hip hop is A, right? And rock would be B. Let's call it bedrock instead. And country is somewhat logically C, okay? So A, B, C, right? And now we'll take the information unique to the problem, which again, unfortunately, is on this other slide here, and sort of just make bullet points as a notation for ourselves. We've established what the Venn diagram will represent. Hip hop, rock, country. That makes sense, right? So next thing, just because I'm short on space here, I'll erase this. Let's figure out how many totals there are, you know, from each. Totals, sums, for each. Here's my bullets, all right? I'll use a little bit of the set logic symbols, right? Abbreviations, because we're acquainted with them now. So, for example, here's bullet point number 1, the cardinal number. The number of what would be the universal set, right? The number of items in the universal set, meaning all things involved, all parts from the box, everything in the Monopoly set, you know, to use a bad analogy. The question, the problem, quotes this. It says that there are 500 people who were surveyed, all right? Of 500 people, then it goes into specifics, all right? So you would say, all right, the universal set is about people, all right? And their likes and dislikes, all right, their likes primarily. So this number that I'm working with total is 500. We're going to save that information because it will become useful later. All right, next thing, all right? Let's figure out the number of people in A. Now, granted, A is how many according to this, all right? Of 500, we know for certain 270 listen to hip-hop. That is the total number of people who listen to hip-hop music, all right, out of 500, all right? In the picture, what would that mean? I'm gonna trip over this. In the picture, what would that actually be represented by? Yeah. This first red circle. Everything bound within this first red circle would be 270. I'm going to have to erase this, so I don't want to mislead you and go, oh yeah, I should write that there. Don't. I'm just trying to reiterate what I'm saying, right? This circle represents 270 people out of 500. So the number of people total in A is 270. That will be important later. Right. It goes on to say that the total number of people in category B, the rock listeners, all right, is another number out of 500. What is it out of 500? It's apparently 320. Right? So in the picture, what would that represent? Everybody bound within this circle, and there is naturally an overlap, of course, there would be 320 people, right? Don't write 320 yet. I'm just trying to reiterate what I'm saying, all right, to emphasize it, all right? That's 320 people total in blue encapsulation there. So to write it a little bit more symbolically, it would be the number 320 and the cardinal number of B. lastly, of our basic information, category C. All right, the total people who like country music. The total people who like country music are 160. All right. So, I'll put this in green, and there you have it, 160. All right. This is a more concise way, more concise than even what I have listed here. Right? I think the bullet points that I'm making now are actually better because they are adapting the symbols that we have used. All right? The cardinal number of A, the total number of A. The cardinal number of B, the total number of B. The cardinal number of C is the total number of C. And they are 270, 320, and 160 total. Right? Now, as a side note, and I'll put a little squiggle here, we're going to put together those things now that are cross-genre, all right? And we have some other information that was thrown at us as well, all right? In the thing it says, and I have it listed here, 140 people listen to both hip-hop and, that's supposed to be an and symbol, rock, all right? So, remember that word and, all right? And implies an intersection. So, in theory, all right, I'm looking for the number of people, all right, that are both A, all right, and B, right? I already have the number, and that's great, right? But I do want to pay special homage to a certain symbol that we are familiar with right now. A and B, if they intentionally choose that word and, is implying the intersection symbol, right? Which is talking about the overlap, all right, of A and B. What that's actually referring to, again, don't draw this, just observe it, all right? What portion of this diagram that is being referred to when you have A intersect B, A and B, just the overlap of those two things, would be the bunch of people who fit into this biscuit. It sort of looks like a Jesus fish, you know, without the tail, I suppose, all right? Or a biscuit shape, right? That would technically be A and B. Now, you might naturally be a little bit concerned because, you know, there is this third category, but kind of block it out of your mind just temporarily, all right? They give us a number, and the number quoted is 140, all right? If you ever, again, feel a little bit sketchy about it, remember from the last class, I did include one thing that I swiped from the book because I thought it was actually very useful, all right? It's sort of a security blanket, if you will, all right? This is a great page to have, all right? Because it will validate and verify your suspicions, right? Here is the intersection of A and B. And again, it is this sort of biscuit Jesus fish, for lack of a better phrase, that you see here, right? But notice what it is. In the case of a three-Venn diagram, it's represented by two different Roman numerals, right? It's Roman numeral 2 and 5 simultaneously. If it were just a 2 set and not a third set, then it would just be represented by number 2. But because we have country music involved in here, you can blame country music, all right? This is the way it is actually validated. So again, have this schematic diagram, all right, from section 2.4 printed, because again, it will just give you a little bit more security as you're going through the process, all right? That's from last class. Anyhow, the cardinal number of A and B is like saying the number of things from the intersection of A and B would be 140, right? And again, it would be this biscuit. It's like from carpentry, all right? You're going to join pieces of wood together, you have biscuits, you know? That's why I say that. Just one way of doing that, anyhow. Then it goes on further to say the number of elements from B, and I'm trying purposely to stick with the certain color sequence I have here. Rock, so blue again. And country in this case. Is that the crummy green? I think it might be. That's a little bit better, right? You dud, you're going over there. Right. And they use the word in context. The number of listeners to rock and country would be, in theory, the intersection of rock and country. Right? So once again, it's being a consideration of overlap, right? And the number that is quoted to us, without having to keep going back to the paper, is 120 in this case. These numbers that we're establishing at this point, I hope it becomes obvious, and I will reiterate if not, are basically going to be useful to us. The bottom line is you're gonna have to add a lot and you're gonna have to subtract a lot. All right? And there's two more pieces of information, right? The number of listeners to, and I'm just sort of alphabetizing here, listeners to the cross-genre listeners of hip-hop A and country C, and, right, is 80 people, right? And then they do go further to, and I'm going to put this one in asterisk because it really is the most important, only for the reason that it's going to be where you're going to start, right? It's a bullet point as well, right? The number of people, all right, who listen to all three things, right? All three genres, so A, B, and C, A and B and C, and that's supposed to be an and, is how many people? All right, according to the information, 50. Okay. All right, now again, if you were going to go opt for the abbreviations, the symbols that represent and, they again would be an intersection symbol. Now it just so happens that because you have three things included at the same time, it would be the number, the cardinal numbers, the total number of listeners to the overlap of A, B, and C, right? What that is referring to in this picture happens to be the little sort of Superman-esque shield that you see here, and by that I mean like 1940s Superman had that sort of a style shield, all right? Or the timely comics kind of shield, if you will. The dead center, all right? The overlap of all three things, the very center of this sort of Celtic flower, if you will, all right? Anyhow, but what is that? It's region 5, right? So even though it's obscure, all right, some of the information already to fill in this diagram is given to us, right? Again, we always want to start with region 5, so dead center. That makes it a lot easier, all right? I'm just going to get rid of these and symbols now, all right, because they're kind of making a mess, all right? All right, and I think it's understood that and means intersection. All right, it is, again, don't feel bad, very easy as an English-speaking person to erroneously use the word and when you really should say the word or, just as a technicality, all right? But that didn't come up at all. The word or did not come up at all, all right? In this word problem, it is just strictly the word and therefore we're concerned with the intersections, really, these overlapping areas, all right? All right. Anyhow, so here's how we go about the process. What I'm going to do is try to fill in the little that I can and then make more bullet points here. All right. I don't have a lot of board space. In theory, you have this written already, and if you don't have it written, please do write this, all right? I'm gonna erase this just so I have some place to work as I'm going about this. So in theory, on a nice clean piece of paper, all right, you have that information that I just erased. And we're gonna go through this order of operations now to fill in the diagram. So step 1, all right, I'm just gonna list it here as a bullet point, Roman numeral 5, the dead center. Well, that would be stuff in common to all three, which we just were told with that asterisk, the number of people who listen to all three genres of music, hip hop, rock, and country, are 50. So you could just list this as 50 and then put that in the dead center, 50. All right, now the strategy is, let's do an overlap, right? They suggest doing these two, all right? So, pardon me, this one and the one just above it, all right? So 5, we're gonna go now to do 2, all right? In order to use this information, all right, in other words, to arrive at the number of people that are in 2, just from here to here, we would need to know the total in the biscuit, all right, to get a portion of it. And we already know that as well. What would that represent if I'm sticking with the Venn diagram abbreviations and symbolic logic? All right, it would look like this. You would say, all right, well, it's got to be, this is slowing me down a little bit, but it would have to be that overlap that we just discussed of A and B, right? Their intersection is the whole biscuit, all right? Minus the portion of it that we now know for sure, all right? So this number minus 50, all right? How much is actually this number? We were already told that it is 140, right? Now, rather, yes, 140, right? So this is really 140 minus 50, and that would equal what? All right. What would be the balance that fits in the Star Trek symbol here? 90. Okay. So what I would add now to my diagram is that little piece of information that we have just inferred. Yeah. Would deduce, is that correct? Yeah, I gotta think about that. All right, we just concluded that if the whole biscuit is 140, because that's the whole overlap, and we know a chunk of it is 50, then the balance would have to be 90, all right? And it is that thought process that we're going to repeat now with this biscuit instead, all right? This petal, whatever you want to call it. All right, so now we're gonna do region 4, all right? What is region 4 gonna be, all right? It is the intersection of, logically, the overlap of these two things. So it would be hip hop and country, all right? And we're gonna borrow the same number, right? So we already know that the dead center is 50. So it's gonna be minus 50 again. And what was quoted to us, without us having to go look for it, was the number of people who are in this category of cross-genre listeners, right? In this situation, they are 120 people. Right? So that makes this 120 minus 50, which is how much? Right? 70. I wish that would stop doing that. Come on. Do I not move around enough? Okay. So if the whole thing in this overlap here, this biscuit, this petal, is 120, and we know a chunk of it is 50 naturally, this would be the balance, 70. So now, let me just remove the distraction, okay? And again, we're gonna continue with this logic until we're building from the center out, all right? We're gonna do this overlap. So that would be B and C, right? right? What region is this? It's 6, technically. Right? And we're going to naturally subtract from 50 again. What would this be officially? Well, it would be B intersect C. I gotta get that. All right. What other than trade one for them? What would be the total number of people in this leaf? All right. Well, what is quoted to us is 80. All right. So this would be 80 minus 50, which would be what, naturally? 30, right? Okay. I fudged these numbers, didn't I? Yeah. This situation should be here, and that should be there. I'm sorry. So I'll correct myself now. 80 goes there. 120 goes here, which means 70 goes here, and 30 goes there. 37. Sorry. Gotta switch that. 30, 70. Right? I did these out of order. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Yep. All right. Good. Sorry for the hiccup there. So we've covered 5, 2, 4, and 6, and we would want to do it. Let's at least be rigid for right now. We'll stick with that. 5, 2, 4, and 6, and I inadvertently switched these contents. Sorry. All right. Now we're going to go for region 1, right, and then region 3, and then region 7, and then we'll figure out what actually sits on the outside of these categories. So again, I'm running out of space, and it's already drawn in the picture here, so I could erase it now. All right. So if we do region 1 now, things that are only A, that is referring to this moon sort of marshmallow shape here. So that's region 1. That would be, I'm going to list it here as a bullet point. Region 1, all right, would be the sum or difference of what? Well, it would be the number of things in A total. So number of hip-hop listeners total. I have to put this down. I'm going to drop it again. All right. Which is, I'll just put it underneath it, 270 people to work with, right? And then this bunch of these people who are cross-genre in one way or another, right? And if we're just getting things that are exclusively A, just the moon shape here, that sort of looks like a face, right? Then we're not going to add these, right? We're going to subtract them. But here's what we'll do to sort of set it up to spare us a little bit of trouble. Rather than subtract 90 and then 50 and then 30 one at a time, what we'll do is we'll group them first. All right? So I'm going to put the sum of 90 plus 50 plus 30 in its own little encapsulation here. All right? Its own little group. All right? So the logic would be the total of everything encapsulated by A minus that portion of A that is cross-genre. How much is 90 and 50 and 30? Right? Well, if this is, you can do it in any particular order, but if that's 80 and this is 90, that would be 170. Right? And we're going to subtract 270 and 170 and arrive at the conclusion that this is 100. Right, so in this region now, which I'll just erase the extra mess here. we're going to put the number 100. Okay? Yeah. And we're going to continue. So now we're going to do what would be region 2 here. All right? Region 2 is a similar sort of formula. All right? It would be the total amount, the number, the cardinal number of B which is what we have established from earlier, is what? 320, right? All right, minus where there is an overlap in some of the same figures here, right? So we would have to subtract, rather than one at a time, which is not wrong, it's just less efficient, all right? The sum of 90 plus 50 plus 70, all right? And in tandem, this would be what? Or all together, rather. This would be 140, and then 140 plus another 70. Right. So what's 14 plus 7? Let's see, 621, right? So 210. We are ultimately going to subtract 320 minus 210, just to do it lickety-split, right? So what does that end up being? Right? It would be 110. Right? So the people who are exclusively B listeners, right, rock listeners, would be 110 here. Right? And we're making good progress. So we're going to do this one more time here. Region, this down here is technically region, I'm writing it out of order. This is region 7. Right? So in this instance, we want to know, well, what do we have to work with? Right? The total number of country listeners minus, again, that chunk that is cross-genre, which in this case would be the overlap of 30, 50, and 70. Right? The total number of country listeners quoted to us was originally how many people? 160, right? So this is really 160. I'm putting that in black just because I think it'll be easier to see. And then the sum of these independently would be what? 30 and 50 is 80, 80 and 70 is 150. So what is 160 minus 150? Ultimately, it's just 10 people. All right, which means that in region 7, exclusively country listeners, they are 10. All right. Okay. Now, you might jump the gun a little bit and go, good, I got it done, right? But remember, there are those people in theory who don't listen to anything that is listed here, all right? And they would be written or accounted for somewhere outside of the circles, but still within the universal set. So we're going to do one more calculation, and then we're going to begin answering some of the questions. All right, I need the space again, so I'm going to erase this. I need the area to be more technical. All right. When we're considering the leftovers, if you will, all right, that would be in region 8. All right. Region 8 is outside of the 3 circles. So you can put stuff here, you can put stuff there, and technically over there and there, but inside the rectangle, right, just outside the circles. All right. If I'm listing this as a bullet point train of thought logic algorithm here, region 8, all right, stuff that goes here, would be what? All right. It would be the total from the universal set, right? Everything that you have to work with, in theory, in the box, all right? Like a board game, all the parts, all the game tokens and pieces and what have you, all right? But then deducting from that, right? Subtracting out everything that is in this Mickey Mouse head here, all right? So rather than do it piecemeal, subtracting from whatever number that is, this number, that number, one at a time, will encapsulate them. Right? So the cardinal number of the universal set, everything that we have to work with, minus the sum of region 1, region 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? And now just replace these regions with their actual value, right? So just for the sake of contrast, I'm going to put blue because I like it, right? Maybe I shouldn't have done setting the example here. All right, the total number of people who were surveyed, 500, right? The number of people in region 1 is 100, 2 is 90, all right, 110, all right, 30, 50, 70, and 10, right? So I'm going to figure out what that adds up to, and then we'll subtract one time rather than several times, all right? So let's see what works out here. When you have a bunch of things being added, remember there's a commutative property of addition, so you could add them in any convenient order as long as you do all of them. The way that my crazy brain works is that this is exactly 200, all right? And 200 plus 100 is 300, so I've accounted for these three, all right? That's 80, and that's 70, all right? And that's 150. 300 plus 150 is 450. And then another 10 is 460, right? All right. Now you subtract them, right? So what is 500 minus 460? Difference of 40, right? So that means that in here, outside of Mickey here, is 40 people who don't like anything. They won't try anything. No, that's not nice. There's only 3 categories of music here, so in theory, you know, there's naturally going to be some people who would, you know, are not part of the group here. All right, now, once you have a completed Venn diagram, you can actually answer the questions. We've done all of the hard work, the logic, all right, and we will proceed with the questions A, B, C, and D. All right? Which means that what I'll do is I'll go back to the other slide now and put it here, and then use the same space to answer A, B, C, D. See if I can just scoot up here. That worked out quite well. Okay, great. All right. As if by magic. All right. So, I'll move this aside here. I'll erase it. And everything is in the right location. All right, so we have a completed diagram. All right. The questions are A here. All right. To answer question A, the question is, because it's obscured slightly, right? How many listen to hip hop only? Hip hop only. All right. If you wanted to get fancy, all right, you could go ahead and say, well, there's an abbreviation I could use for that, right? We know what hip hop only is immediately, all right? If you wanted to sort of translate this, and I wouldn't fault you if you didn't, all right?
I was asking where
it's region 1, right? This is asking what is region 1, right? It's 100. Okay. Next question. This one is a little bit more tricky, and I was deceived myself when I first wrote this, so let me show you what to avoid here. How many listen to country and rock but not hip hop?
do you trust this website then? Because I'm looking at it now. I don't want to
let's try to identify this as being some Roman numerals or something akin to it at least, right?
Where did you learn
Start with the first fragment of the sentence here, all right? How many listen to rock and country? If it's and in the most strictest sense of the word, it would be the intersection of these two things, right? So intersection of B and C specifically. And I'll just sort of encapsulate them like so, right? To make it a little bit clearer, all right? It's the intersection of B and C to start with, right? But not hip hop. So if it's not something, that means that we're going to subtract out something, all right? And the region that is inclusive of hip hop, right, would be technically this.
how much were you trying to purchase for?
All right, it would be the intersection of A, B, and C. Do you have to go through this to be concise? No, I'm only taking the time honestly because I want to show you that there is in fact a logic to it. All right, the overlapping region that is B and C, all right, would be this portion of it, right? The biscuit that is 50 and 70 and therefore 120. All right. The region that would be all things, all right, would be basically that chunk of it, the overlap of all three rather than the overlap of two. So that would be, realistically, this is just 50, right? The dead center, right? So if it is but not, right? This is implying in a very subtle way that hip-hop would be included, but not would be minusing that, right? So 120 minus 50 would give you what? All right? It would technically be referring to region 6, all right? If B and C, and another way of writing it, all right, is basically the region that is 5 plus, what you call it, 6, that's backwards. And this would be the region 5, all right, then to take 5 and subtract 5, all right, would leave you with 6 technically, all right? It's the third way of looking at it. Anyhow, the bottom line is that the answer is 70, all right? It's the thing that they're weirdly referring to this Star Trek symbol here, this particular pedal, all right? All right, English is confusing, right? For better. No, I shouldn't say for better. There's nothing confusing as for the better, right? But there's the nature of it, all right? That doesn't make it bad. It just means that it's not necessarily practical for teaching math, all right? All right. And if you do teach math in English, then you really must constantly correct yourself, right? There's a sort of a colloquial way of speaking, right? That, and this is the reason why people hate math, all right? It's not the math's fault. It is the language that they talk, all right? English, again, unfortunately, as a math teacher, I can tell you, it gets you in trouble a lot, all right? You have to be ultra precise, right? All right, so 70 is the answer to question B, okay? And I'll erase this, and I'll just put this over here to keep it out of the way. This is talking about region 6 ultimately, and therefore the answer is 70. All right? The intersection minus the intersection of all, the intersection of 2 minus the intersection of all 3. All right? So 120 minus 50 is 70. Okay. This one is pretty straightforward. I'll put this in black. All right. C. All right. C is asking, C is asking, well, how many people listen to none of these? All right. None of these are the people who are outside of Mickey Mouse's head here. All right. And we've already calculated that. What does it mean literally? It means the region specifically. It would be region 8 technically, okay. Which is how many people? All right. 40. All right, and now the last one, hopefully this green will cooperate. Don't listen to country. This is the more challenging of the questions because there's a lot of steps involved here, but we'll work it through. Don't listen to country. Yeehaw. Now, there's listen to country, and then there's don't listen to country, which is, you know, basically a complement of country, right? This is asking for the complement of country. Let me, for the sake of visual aid here, encircle everything that is country. Anyone that is somehow or other in this circle that I'm tracing over and over again, like a crazy man, all right, would not be part of this answer, all right, because those are country listeners. So I'm going to scribble on top of this because we really are not even going to look there, all right. It is everything outside of Scotch plaid circle here that we really need to consider, right? What would it mean if I were going to incorporate some of the region symbols, right? Well, technically it would be the sum of region 1 and region 2 and region 3, but what else also? All right, region 8. All right, and those numbers are 100, 90, 110, and 40. Right. All right, and again, my crazy logic would be, this commutative property allows me to get away with it. That's 200. That's 300. That's 340. So this is equal to 340. Okay, for D, the answer to D. Okay, I think that's kind of fun, and most importantly, it illustrates the thought process, right? When you're doing your homework in my lab, don't be deterred. I know we all make mistakes. You see me make silly mistakes all the time, all right? Stick with the order of operations, if you will, right? So again, maybe this is why, again, I included it a second time. Maybe have this sheet on hand, right, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a blank table, so you don't have to draw it, all right? And definitely do things in this order, okay? You're going to work with the very center, then 2, all right, then 4, then 6, all right? And then 1, and then 3, and then 7, and then 8, okay? It'll help you get through it. It isn't impossible to do it some other way, but it's more cumbersome if you don't have a strategy, all right? So this, if you try this strategy multiple times, and that's the whole point of the repetition of it, do anything several times, it sticks, right? So go about the process consistently that way, all right? All right, that's really all there is to it for section 2.5. So let me open the curtain here. Let me turn off my projector. Right. Just the homework. Right. Do section 2.5. Right. It's a lot of the same type of problem. Again, they're applications filling in a 3-set diagram. Right. So work on that. Right, and you'll be right where we're supposed to be. Okay. Right. I'll see you on, today is what, Thursday? I'll see you on Tuesday, all right? Be careful out there.